Kevin Gordon here from AutoSavant.com with a first drive review of the 2013 Hyundai Genesis Coupe. The one we're in right now is the 3.8 liter R-Spec model, which is the base of the 3.8 liter Genesis, I suppose you might say. Initial impressions of this thing are quite impressive, actually. First thing I can tell you is whoever designed the seating position in this thing actually understands how to drive a car. I've got the ability to be far enough away from the pedals, and because of a manual telescopic steering wheel, I can still get nice and close to the steering wheel, and the shifter falls to a very good position. You know, it's right where you'd want everything to be as far as these distances go. The 2013 Genesis Coupe is considered refreshed for this model year, not a complete redesign. And the major exterior changes, which I'll show you some pictures of, really focus on sort of combining the styling elements of this with the Veloster in a lot of ways. It's a positive thing. I think the new design of this is a bit polarizing in some ways, but I like it. I think they've made it sporty. The fake hood vents are a little gimmicky, but can't complain too much, I suppose. And let me tell you, the thing runs right along. It doesn't have any of the Hyundai shift shock protection that I can tell. The traction control in the new Genesis is a three-stage system. So as you start the car, it's fully on. If you press it once, it disables traction control but leaves stability control in place, which means that if you come to a complete stop, so let me turn. Traction control is now on. It will happily spin the tires through the first two gears. For the 2013 model year, most of the drivetrain updates are in the engine. They've moved to a direct injection system. It gives this car, and I may get this wrong because I'm doing it completely from memory, 348 horsepower and 292 foot-pounds of torque on premium gas. And one of the things Hyundai's done is allowed you completely to run regular fuel. So if you don't want to pay for premium, and you pay a little bit of a horsepower and torque penalty, but it's not all that significant. The other update is to the transmission. They say that they've done quite a bit of work to firm up feel. They've lowered effort and engagement between the ratios. It's close ratio. I wouldn't call it anywhere near class leading quite yet, but it's definitely a step up from the previous generation. So let's do a quick acceleration run here in the Genesis. What's that pedal? It really does run through the gears nicely. So one of the tricks that they've done with the Genesis, similar to what they've done with the Mustang, is piped in a sound tube. So in the intake runner that goes into the engine, there's a part of it that breaks off and comes into the cabin to give you some better resonance of what's happening. And it really does sound good. You get a nice balance between the exhaust sounds coming from the back and the sound tube coming from the intake. It's not overpowering, it's not drony. You really only hear it when you've really got the throttle bodies, if throttle bodies were the way they were, open. Wanted to get a little exterior video for you guys, give you an idea of some driving impressions. We're up here in a pretty nice driving area, so we'll see how this is going down the hill. I'm gonna leave the sound running. So inside the Genesis Coupe, like I said, the cockpit is a pretty nice place to spend time. Interior materials in here aren't stellar or super exciting in all honesty, but layout's pretty clear. Everything's easily within reach. New to this year is this 3-round gauge pod setup, which gets you instant fuel consumption torque on the V6, and it gives you boost pressure on the 2.0 turbo, and you also get oil temperature. You do seem to get a little bit of wheel hop if you really launch it hard and spin the wheels, although I don't know if that's the fastest way to get it to 60 or not. And the back end definitely plays on this car, which is a very nice feature. From a ride and handling position, it's definitely firm, there's no doubt about that, but it's not punishing in any way. It seems like a car you could really spend a decent amount of time in and not regret buying something that's got as much sporting potential as this does. What criticisms might I have about it? Like I said, the interior isn't luxurious. The shifter is better by far than the old version of the Genesis, but it still is a little indecisive. You know, when you're really hustling it, not so much on upshifts, but on downshifts, you can find yourself like fishing a little bit to figure out where it's going to go. The engine's got a ton of grunt, but it's one of those big displacement V6s that doesn't really want to be revved all the way till redline. It doesn't give you that same linear feeling all the way up to the top of the rev band that some of its smaller competitors do, or some of the smaller V8s that are almost similar sized in displacement do. Here we come up to a traffic circle. See if we can get arrested. So the Genesis will definitely drift. There's no doubt about that. Actually, it balances quite nicely at the point. I could have, and I'm not an excellent driver, and I could have easily continued to hold that thing all the way around the rest of the circle. So this car is 3.8 liter direct gasoline injected V6. As I said, makes 348 horsepower and 295 foot-pounds of torque with premium, 344, 292 without. In the city, it gets 18 miles a gallon. On the highway, it gets 27 with a 21 combined number with the manual. So with the 8-speed automatic, that's also new for the 2013 Genesis Coupe, you get an extra mile per gallon on the highway, which gets you 28 miles per gallon on the highway and a 22 combined number. We're in the R-Spec Genesis Coupe, which is the base model trim, but it does get you all the goodies. So you get the Brembo brakes, a real Torsen differential. You just don't get all the gadgetry and trinkets in here. But if you really want a driver's car, it's still a nice place to spend time. And this car is $28,750 plus, I believe, a $750 destination fee. And now coming to you from the more luxury-oriented version of the Genesis Coupe. Forgive me, I will put it in post, scrolling across the bottom of the screen, what the actual name of this model is. I can tell you it's one of the middle steps of the Genesis Coupe with the 3.8-liter V6. It's the one without all the track accoutrements, but it does have nice leather. You get nav, keyless, climate control. You get all the creature comforts in this one. The big difference as far as driving goes, at least as far as sporty driving goes, in this one versus, say, like the R-spec one I had earlier, is the fact there's no limited slip differential. And let me tell you, that really does change.
Half of a mile, turn slight right onto Sprout Brook Road.
So not having that limited slip differential does dramatically change the personality of this car. You know, in the other car, it's a real Torsen, so a real mechanical driven positive traction system. In this, with an open
Quarter of a mile, turn slight right onto Sprout Brook Road.
In this, with an open differential, you really don't get the same activeness out of the rear end. Okay, so in the 8-speed automatic, now in more manual mode, you do get a bit more of aggressive launch. You know, from a real enthusiast perspective, I'm in as manual control of a manual mode as you can get into, and the car is still upshifting on its own even without the input of the paddles. So with the automatic, you do get manual control over the transmission on the stick shift. You also get the paddle shifters on the steering wheel. In normal drive, they do it right, where you're riding along in drive, it goes to obviously a reasonably fuel economy setting, but if you start pulling on the left trigger, it will downshift. One thing a little bit odd, it doesn't rev match downshifts. From a riding and handling perspective, this model, without the extra sporting bits of the R-spec and the track model, does ride a little bit softer and makes it a little bit more of a touring feel. When we're on the highway at some real speeds, it's quiet in here. You can obviously hear me. There's no drone on the highway, and you know, with the 8-speed transmission with the automatic, it really does sort of lope right along down the highway. So to sum up the 2013 Hyundai Genesis Coupe with the V6, since we've had a chance to sample sort of both versions of it, the manual with all the sporty bits, and now the 8-speed automatic in the more luxury model with leather, keyless, and the rest, it's definitely competitive in its segment. It's been a nice place to spend time. It seems like another place where Hyundai looked at what's out there, made improvements where they were needed, listened to their customers, and delivered another product that's going to be successful for them. I'm Kevin Gordon from Autosavant.com, and I look forward to talking to you guys soon.